All right, we're live. Hello, everyone. All 218, 17, 19. Just kidding. The number keeps changing. So, hello. Happy Friday to those who were. It's still Friday. Hopefully, it's Friday for most of you, but happy Friday. We are here. We are live. I am here with Robbin and Mary. I am Emily. And today we're here to talk about what it's like to be a UX designer at a very, very, very large company. So if you were here with us last time, we talked about the complete opposite about working at a very small company. Now we're taking perspective to a large company and how that potentially changes based on company size. So we will, everyone's already saying hello in the chat. That's amazing. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. Say hello in the chat, share your LinkedIn, all that fun stuff. Questions, go in the questions tab. So folks in the chat, I am relying heavily on you. If folks are asking questions in the chat, please direct them to the questions tab. So that way we see them all and we'll do our best to get through as many of them as possible. But we are going to keep time in mind. We're going to be here for about 45 minutes to an hour. And based on kind of the trends of questions, like last time, went very heavily towards like job hunting, which we will cover in a different webinar. So today we're going to focus on what it's like to be a UX designer. Cool? All right. We're gonna get started one more time. So I'm Emily. I'm the community manager for Design Lab, and I have my two lovely co-hosts here with me. I have Mary and Robbin, both of whom are facilitators at Design Lab. We've been a facilitator team for a very long time together. So I'm very grateful for these two being a very solid part of our community. And today we get to learn about what it's like to work at a very large company. So I'm gonna hand it off to them to introduce themselves. So again, folks in the chat, please help me redirect folks to the questions tab, share your LinkedIn, all that stuff. And yes, this is recorded. If you are here, you will get this emailed. And then folks who are not here, whenever you see this, you'll know that you got the recording. Otherwise, it's on YouTube. It will be on YouTube and you can share this with folks. So I'm going to start it off with Mary. Please introduce yourself. Let them know who you are, where you currently work, what you do, and why you decided to become a UX designer.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. My name is Mary. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a product designer at Sprout Social in Chicago. We're a software company, SaaS company. I went through Design Lab. I graduated in May of 2020. I was actually came through the school of Robbin's crits. So dreams come true that we're all here today and surviving. But yeah. So I have to thank Robbin a lot for why I wanted to become a crit facilitator. So that's very fun for me today. But yeah, I guess my background was in digital marketing, and I did it for many, many years. And it was just, it was a really great job in a lot of ways, but just wasn't challenging for me mentally. And I was just looking for a big change. And that is why I went down the Design Lab path. And I am so happy that I did because I absolutely love my job. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. All right, Robbin.
Hello, I'm Robbin. Hilariously, I was in the school of Emily Group Crits back in the day. I'm currently a senior product designer at Procore. I'm actually in the process of switching over to the main Procore design team. So it'll be an interesting thing. I'm basically going from like this same design team, which is like a subsidiary part of Procore, where there were like 6 of us, to now going to a larger design team where there's 80 of us. So Procore is pretty massive. Everything's going to change. I'm going to be working on design systems. It's going to be pretty fun. My background was in customer support and some community management, among other random things like being a bookstore person and pharmacy and print shop stuff. So very weird, various backgrounds. And I became a UX designer because at first it was like, man, I really like complaining about stuff. How can I be paid for it? But secondly, the most important thing that I'm realizing now is like, I like being a UX designer because it helps to like know who else wants to be in the field. So for me, I've been very big about like, I like making sure other people can get into the field because we need to have more diverse voices in the design world in general. So yeah, if you want to be a professional complainer, be a UX designer, you get paid for it. So that's great.
Yeah, it's true story. Like if you're the kid who always just asks like, but why the whole time, right? And like people are like, why do you keep asking but why? Like this is a job for you. So truly, you get to ask all the questions and people can't get mad at you. It's the best. But all right, cool. So we actually do have one question in the questions tab, which is there a way to see the previous session about small companies? Yes, go to our YouTube channel. I will actually post the link shortly in the chat for you all. So don't worry about that. But otherwise, our YouTube channel has all of these things. So cool. Oh, we got a juicy question already. So maybe we'll just dive right into that because, you know, my questions are boring. So this one's from Vanessa. It's about, can you talk about the bureaucracy or politics or whatever in, you know, that happens in larger companies? We're going to actually scale that question to design specifically. So kind of like, how do you work with other people? How do you like come to decisions and all that stuff? Like, how do you work with a large team? So whoever wants to start first, go for it.
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah, I'm gonna be very frank in that I am so lucky that I don't feel like I work in that kind of environment. And I think this is something that you can also kind of poke at when you interview somewhere to find out the type, if there is like bureaucracy and the type of environment that you might work in. But I guess speaking in terms of working in a large team, yeah, so at Sprout, we are like 30, 35 designers, but we're split up in zones and squads. So a zone is like a big part of the app, and then a squad is a smaller part within that zone. So we're broken up very nicely in that we are all responsible for a fairly specific part of the software. So yes, we are a big team, but we're also really broken up into smaller teams, and that makes the world that I live in at Sprout seem very small. I work with just a few other designers on this specific part, but we all come together and review each other's work and give each other feedback. I don't need to be an expert in another zone to be able to give positive, give constructive and positive feedback on something that's going on in another zone. So I guess that, and I would encourage people when you are interviewing to find out how their design teams are set up, because if it was 30 of us, we're all working across the app with no like constraints, it would be wildly inefficient and extremely confusing and stressful. So just to like recap, we're kind of working in this zone and squad structure, which really helps with that.
Nice. On my end, so I've worked at a couple of big companies. Aside from Procore, there was also Yelp, and everything is really structured very differently. To Mary's point, the main thing that you need to think about is like, what does the design leadership look like? Because that's going to really affect the bureaucracy, politics, et cetera, et cetera. At Yelp, there were about 40 designers, and they were split up into specific big pods at Yelp. So there were people who were mainly focused on like, all right, we're splitting up into, these are the ones who handle anything that has to do with payments. These are the ones who handle anything to do with reviews. These are the ones who handle like all the brand stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So for the most part, like we could comment on other people's stuff, but in terms of like actually getting things through, we were basically responsible for that on our own side. And I will say that like at some companies, like you really have to see who's gatekeeping for your work. Like you need to know who's the person of contact and who's the main point of contact for that. So like ideally it should be your PM, but at some places it was like I had to actually sit through a really, really big room with like VPs, and I had to present for about 5 minutes on my whatever I was working on. And they'd be like, I'm not a gatekeeper, but I just need to go and see what you're doing so I can say whether or not it's going to go through it. I'm like, that's kind of what gatekeeping is. But whatever. So like sometimes that's what it is. Yeah. So at some companies you do have to kind of like talk to a VP. That's kind of weird. I prefer like companies where I know that my main point of contact is my PM because they're my partner. But every time like a VP comes into the picture, like I've become a lot more just like, so why are you here exactly? Tell me more, because you're not actually in the details. So why do you have to be here. Like, I don't think that it's necessary for them to be there for small changes. So like, I'm very okay with just speaking up and saying like, yo, what? So yes, there's bureaucracy, there's politics with larger companies. Like, the bigger you get, the more stuff happens. And specifically within things like Procore, you have like an 80-person team. There's like a specific a branch of design just called design ops. So like, the more you have, it's like, that means you have lots of resources, but then you have to figure out how to make sure that all of these people are like happy and you know what's going on. And that does inevitably create a lot of like red tape. So my hope with like being in the design system team is to make it not so terrible to make those small changes. But we also don't want people just detaching instances from Figma every day. So
totally. Okay, so that actually leads us perfectly into another question that is showing up. So working with PMs, right? Especially in larger teams, there are going to be more PMs. So in terms of how you work with them, like what does your relationship look like with your PMs on a day-to-day basis at a larger company? Guess we'll go reverse. Maybe we'll start Robbin and then we'll go Mary.
Cool. So I'm kind of in flux right now, but I work with anywhere from 4 to 6 PMs/stakeholders at any given time. The way that I work with them is I'm very, very, very protective and adamant about making sure that my time is spent wisely. So I've created my own personal design roadmap that I make sure that each of these PMs, like, they have to come with me like into one meeting every 2 weeks so that they can all talk to each other and see, like, as you can all see, I am one Robbin, I am one designer. You are sharing me. I am a shared resource. Y'all have to actually prioritize together. If you do not put a very clear business objective for what you need in terms of design here, I'm going to put it down. Like, we're not going to be putting this on the priority list. There's just no way I'm going to be doing that. So for anything that they have to do, like, that's how I have to manage like all of my PMs. I will say though, like, it's a strange sort of situation because like with a startup type team that is going into a public team, the biggest thing that you have to think about is like, how are they growing into that? And what are some of the things that they're actually kind of continuing on as if they're still doing startup stuff. I think having just one designer to like 4 to 6 PMs is a little silly. But you know, that's how it was like in startup land. So you had to have like one person who knew everything. Like, I am very good at every single one of these things because I'm entrenched in it. But it's also like, gosh, I wish I at least had one other person to help me with this stuff. So yeah, that's what I do. I have a very specific roadmap. I give estimates of like how long that I think each of these things are. And one of the big things that I'm very proud I did was to say, like, now that we're all in the room together, y'all keep saying this thing called quick wins. We're never going to say that again. And here's why we're never going to say that again. Because your definition of a quick win is not the same as mine. So if you actually want something that's a quick win, you need to prove to me that it's actually quick. And I will show you what it looks like on the design end. And they're like, oh, LOL, sounds good. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Be a lawyer, everyone. Essentially, being a UX designer is being a lawyer of some sort. But anyways, Mary, what about you?
Yeah, so I consider my product manager to be a partner. And we have some rituals, which is another term for meeting, but it's kind of like a more positive term. And one of our rituals is every Monday, the designers from my zone, so my part of the app, and the product managers, we have catch up every Monday. That's a time to just talk about design with our PMs. So the engineers don't go to that, and that's not because we don't want them there. It's because we have other rituals in which they are on. This is really just to focus on design and business. So we have very clear and open communication. This is where I may present my updates on what I'm working on for any of the projects to get feedback from the PMs. Because their perspective is important, because a PM is, to me, somebody who's helping with timelines and kind of like making this crazy Tetris puzzle like work so that I don't have to think about all those things. I can just think about designing and the user and, you know, really focus in and not worry about necessarily when engineering is going to be doing whatever crazy thing. So we have that ritual, which is really nice. Also just I keep my PM updated just on my status, like generally throughout the week. If I come into roadblocks or just like business questions, they're kind of my go-to person first. Not that they're like a gatekeeper, but they're just a wealth of knowledge, and they understand, like, they kind of look at the project like from a very like bird's eye view, which is nice because they kind of talk with all the different departments at Sprout if they're involved in this project. So I don't necessarily have to go find these people. Like, my PM should have those answers for me when they come up. And yeah, and then I see the PM at stand-ups, which is like a daily, just quick meeting every morning where I can also ask questions and they can ask questions of me. Another relationship which Robbin kind of talked about is roadmap planning. So technically the PM does own the roadmap for the product and what we're working on now and what's coming next and what's coming later. But I have the opportunity to put my like stamp on the roadmap and maybe make suggestions of things that we should try to work in if there's what we kind of call paper cuts. So maybe like small UX debt that is something we want to fix within the app. Maybe it's something that's working, but it could be revised a little bit better. How can we get some of those paper cuts into the roadmap so we're continuing to improve? So generally the PM owns the roadmap, at least in my world, but that does not mean I have no say in it. So.
Whew. So certainly there are trends and differences. If you went to our first webinar on small companies, that trend there was that we can't be involved in everything, versus here, because you have more people to hopefully split up the work with, you can feel like you can just dive right in and actually focus on design. So that would be lovely. In my world, that would be lovely. But I do want to segue because Sean is asking a really great question, because I know that this is a concern, especially at large companies where things are, the company's so large or the team is so large where, there's so many things going on. So the question is, are there ongoing methods that either the team or the company uses to keep checking in on users' general experience with the brand and product? And are there self-reflective analytical processes for evaluating how the team is exploring users' experience? So I think that's a really great question. I don't think anyone's asked that before, but it is something to think about, again, because when you have a really large company, there's a lot of things going on. It is easier to let things kind of slide and just say, oh, it's okay, we'll come back to it later. And sometimes that is okay, but in the long run, sometimes it can be very hurtful or detrimental to either the product or the company. So Mary or Robbin, anything that your teams do to kind of like assess user experience over time?
Yeah, I'll go first. Yeah, we have a ritual. We call it Full Story Fridays. Full Story is it's kind of like a way that we can watch users within the app. So we don't track every session because that would probably like break, but it's like 3% of sessions or something. So we can go into Full Story and capture things that we want to look at and see users using the app in real time. So we have this ritual every 2 weeks that our product managers are invited to, all designers and all engineers as well, where it's basically 45 minutes of user research insights. So we might pull full story clips. Maybe if we were interviewing users, we will have clips from our interviews of interesting things that they say. And it's also our time to just like share anything that we've experienced with users, knowing that PMs and software engineers generally aren't on those calls all the time. So we have dedicated time for that. Everybody is invited and it's kind of like an empathy hour. It's a way for everybody to just like tune in on the user, no matter what your role is. And design leads it, but we are pulling out these, nuggets that we think are really important for everybody to see. And from Full Story Friday, we'll often tackle or add to like our paper cuts list, like I was talking about before. Like we might find something that's not working super well and add it to something that we want to focus on moving forward. So yeah, we are it's not just design that's looking at user research stuff. Obviously we do a lot more of it, but we have an opportunity to pull all these tidbits and like share it with the team in a very seamless manner.
Sorry, I had to like
Okay.
move to another room because everything was happening all at once and all the dogs were barking and then all these grass things happened. Um, for I will say this, like when you have a bigger company and you actually like focus your budget on your design team, you have a lot more resources to actually have things like this. Having come from like I did startups, I did like mid-level, I did like super early startups, I'm like at big companies. Like when you have a big company that has a big design team, then you actually have resources to actually keep an eye on that. So we have like a full research team, and the research team is just pretty much consistently doing research. And we have like weekly meetings where you can just like hop in and just see like what's everyone working on, and also like what are some of the things that we've been seeing from our users. So when you have a bigger company and you have the resources and the money to do that, easy, great. You can actually do it and you can actually spend time caring about it. Otherwise, if you're in a smaller company, it becomes more like, no, we just got to move fast and break things. And I'm like, what if we move slow and fix things? But, you know, whatever, it is what it is.
Okay. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter what size company you work at. There's always going to be those conversations of like, what can we actually focus on and not? But related to growth, we actually have a few questions on like, do you personally, personal opinions, do you feel that it is easy to kind of figure out either your growth ladder or how you can grow in a company? And do you feel like larger companies care about your individual growth? So again, this is from your perspective, your experience, because we know that's also very different at all different sorts of companies.
Ooh, I'll start on this one because this is very, very important to me. Like anytime that I'm going to be interviewing at a company, this is literally the first thing that I'm going to ask about. So if you're ever like, if you're ever in an interview situation, they're like, do you have any questions for us? Y'all should be asking the question, what does growth look like for your company as a designer? Do you have a growth ladder? That is like one of the things that has now become non-negotiable to me, because it's like, I need to know where I'm going. I'm at least now at a point where I know what I want to do. And if they give me the option to create my growth ladder, I'll be like, great, you said I could do it, so I'm going to make my own growth ladder. But I would much rather have a manager that cares and a manager that is going to fight for me. Like these are the main things. It's like the most important thing when you're actually going to be like having growth conversations. I will say that it's incredibly difficult to find a good company that is like, one, a good company, and two, a manager that is also a good manager, and three, a manager that's going to like stick around and help you grow, because that is going to be the thing that is that's the thing. That's the thing that's going to actually help you grow. Otherwise, like you need to be extremely like on it all the time. You need to know what you did, why you did it, and why you deserve a raise. Because at the end of the day, you need allies and you need somebody who will listen to you to actually give you that raise, to give you that growth, to give you the title change. And for me, like I've always been a big advocate of like, as soon as you join a company, literally the first things you should do like is not even just learning what's going on in the company. Like you should already know something about it, but like the first things that you should do is reach out to your manager, ask them what the 30, 60, 90 plan is. That is the 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. In your first 3 months, what do you actually want to get done here so that you can feel successful, and so that you can say like, great, based on that, here's what I did. You should not be aiming to like do everything. You want to get as much as you can done. So like if you, let's put it this way, if you are like achieve everything, some people will look at that and be like, well, you clearly didn't set like high enough goals for you, which is kind of annoying and kind of America, but whatever. That aside though, you want to aim for things that you can definitely hit, but also see like what's the next best thing that you can do. You know what I mean? So talk to your manager, talk to the people around you, make allies, because your allies are going to be the ones who can say, yes, Robbin was a great designer. I loved working with her. Here's why, and here's how she helped us with like do A, B, and C. Like if you do not have anybody who's doing that for you and you're the only one doing it, you need to go and just start making some like connections like now. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, plus one to what Robin said about you should talk about this in the interview process. Like you should know before you accept a job what the growth structure looks like. That is something they should be willing to share and have a plan for. So that's a great tip. Make sure you're talking about that. I guess professionally, just in my experience at Sprout, we have two paths. So we have an individual contributor path and a manager path. So that's really great because I don't know if this is an American thing, but it just seems that the path is you get to a point where you just start managing people and that's going to be your promotion. Number one, not everybody wants to manage people. Number two, not everybody should be a manager. And it's nice to work in an environment where there is an IC path. Like if I choose that, I can still grow and keep, moving up this ladder and still not manage people. So that's also something, if you don't want to manage people, and though that may change because you're all going through this career transition, but like that's also something to like ask about in interviews. So professionally that is like set up, but like I really don't know. Like I'm not sure if I want to be a manager. I am like just so happy now still, like I'm 2 years into this, and I feel like every day is such a sponge of information that me being an IC right now, I'm like, I am just happy to be here and like learning all these things. So it's not something that I have actually clearly identified for myself, which is like kind of a goal for my own priorities in the next like 6 months or so. But I think it's okay to not know. But you definitely need to know there is a path. You don't need to know which path you want just yet. But definitely ask about it in interviews because it's so important.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like on my end, like I kind of was like, I don't really want to go the people management route, but I'm like, no, I really want to go the people management route. And I know why. The reason why I want to go the people management route is because it's like, that's how I can actually create opportunities to be like, hey, we need more people who have been trained to do this. So it's like, how else can I get people in boot camps to actually like join things and actually get that experience? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can do that as a people manager. And so everything that I do, like that's how I figure out my own personal growth path, to figure out if I do this, if I do that, I know what my like ultimate goal is to do, like a blank whatever. Like I need to be able to speak at places. I need to be able to, help people grow. I need to be able to help people understand what it means to actually mentor. To do that, I have to be a people manager. So like that's my feeling.
Okay, so related to this, I'm going to spin the question a little bit, but having worked at large companies, as someone who is, let's say, a brand new UX designer, they finished a boot camp, not just Design Lab, but a boot camp, and they're ready to jump right in. What are, I guess, some benefits of them considering working at a larger company and things that maybe they should look out for as they're applying? And if you have like a contrasting point of view of like, well, I also worked at a smaller company and here's how it differs. Like, I think that would probably be helpful, but we don't have to go into that either.
Sorry, that's like, should juniors, like, what are the pros and cons of a junior joining the company?
Yeah, just like, I'm sure, everyone kind of has like their idea on like, I want to go to a startup, I want to go to a big company. So in terms of like thinking of like, I'm a brand new designer, maybe it's better to go to a big company because why? What do we think?
A couple things. I think at a larger company, you are probably going to have a design system, which I think I love working in a design system. I love the constraints that it gives me. I love that I'm not a UI person. That was like the part I struggled with at Design Lab. Love messing around with it like personally, but like professionally, that would give me way too much anxiety. So I like working in a design system. I like knowing what my primary button is going to be, and I don't have to make it, and that's fine, and that's great. And design systems are so much more than that, but there is just so much to learn that I think if you are not super passionate about UI, then that might be a good reason to join a large company. I also think joining a large company, you will be able to learn from other designers, obviously, and maybe there's people who are those individual contributors but like to be mentors. It's probably more likely you'll be able to find a colleague who can be a mentor to you and you can learn from them. Maybe they've been doing this for many more years than you have. So there's just more people to learn from as well. from a strict like design standpoint. I'm sure there's more benefits, but those are the two that really stick out to me.
Yeah, I would +1 that. I mean, I started as a designer in like a startup-y mid sort of thing. And I remember being really upset at first that they wouldn't just let me immediately go into the design team. And this design team was about maybe 12 people or something to that effect. It was still pretty small-ish. And looking back on it now, I understand why they did that. And they actually had told me, but I was just really salty about it. So I was like, ah, whatever. But what they had told me was like, we do not like, we want you on the team, but we don't want to like set you up for failure. We want to actually make sure we have somebody there who can help you like actually succeed and not just throw you in and like have you with nobody to like guide you. Because for them like that, they know that they were taking on a risk by hiring me, like by like me with not enough experience yet, but they wanted to make sure they were mitigating that risk by making sure they had somebody who could basically like be my babysitter, but not really be my babysitter. Fun fact, I ended up actually babysitting them at the end of the day, but whatever. At a big company, like especially with Procore, here, like main reasons why I ended up like surprise benefits that I didn't know about. My general advice is like, if you're joining a company, either like make sure they're paying you well or you're getting really good education out of it. Like Procore is fantastic because there's so many education like benefits. We have literally a whole design month of learning where like the designers are like paid to actually create their own sessions and they can teach you how to do stuff. We also have a mentorship program that's like very specifically like a mentorship program that they've truly developed out. And it wasn't just like, oh yeah, we have a mentorship program. Isn't that super cool? No, there's actually like pages of documentation and ways to like learn how to be a better, what's the word? Learn how to be a better mentor. Procore. Procore is a construction company. So anyway, like if you join a bigger company, to Mary's point, you do have a lot more opportunities for people like to learn from others. You usually have a design system. And again, like I also hate UI. Y'all might be thinking, why are you joining the design system team, Robin? Like the UI is basically already done. What they need is documentation and education and evangelization. And I'm damn good at that. So like that I can do. But when it comes down to like, I also understand like why we need to have this though, because I talked about detaching instances. There's nothing that makes me so sad than one, detaching instances, and two, utilizing instances from stuff where it's just like, this is literally not the same feature. Where is this coming from? But you wouldn't know that unless you had other people to ask. So yeah, bigger design systems, bigger design teams mean more chances for you to actually learn from somebody. Like it's totally fine if you want to join a startup and you're just like, I'm gonna just figure it out. But just my main thing is like, if you do that, make sure you have at least an external mentor. So you have somebody to like say, is this normal too?
Yeah, puppy knows what's up. Another point of view that I'm going to throw out there, not because I've had experience, but just for people to be aware that like Mary and Robbin are also talking about their own experiences with their companies or companies that they've worked at that are large, that have larger teams. You could also potentially apply for a job at a large company, a design job where they have no design team. This is the first time they're actually approaching design and understanding that design is necessary for their company. So you could be in almost a startup type situation, but in a large company. So just know that that is a scenario that can happen. So that's kind of like what you'd want to find out if you are applying for a larger company. So off of that, there have been a few questions about your work-life balance and also what do your day-to-days look like. So we covered this in the last webinar and folks just want to debunk the, maybe it's a myth, maybe it's not, but how much of your time on a day-to-day is spent in meetings versus doing design?
I love this question. I feel like it's asked so much. That's like the first question that's asked when somebody asks about being a UX designer. Oh, I've heard you're in a lot of meetings. To me, like meetings it's a culture thing. It's not to me, it's not specifically to a UX designer position thing. It is a work culture. And if you, and again, something this is harder to ask about in interviews. Like, how many meetings are you in? You can't really ask it like that, but like you should somehow ask how teams work together. But I feel like yes, you have to talk to people and you have to join meetings, and that will be a part of your job. I would say, truthfully, I'm in meetings maybe 30% of my week, which I think is like pretty manageable. But I also work at a company that really respects everybody's time, and we do not have meetings for the sake of having meetings. And we really practice the theme of meeting people where they are. And I feel like you should just do this in life in general. If you need if I need feedback from an engineer, instead of creating a new meeting for meeting with them, I can present this at stand up. I can get their feedback. Maybe if we're having a retro that week, like what other meeting am I going to be in with this person that I could be like, hey, everyone, I would love to take 5 minutes of everybody's time because I really need feedback on this thing I'm working on. And then you don't have to have another meeting. So I think, yes, you will have meetings, but again, something that you should try to figure out, like the culture of it in interview process. But and if you find yourself in a place where you're in too many meetings, that sounds like a problem, and we are problem solvers. So that's a great opportunity to flex your UX skills. I am in too many meetings. How might I not be in too many meetings? And, figure out how to fix the problem for yourself, right? Because we're just like problem solvers. So, but to answer the question truthfully, 30% of the time I'm in meetings, but I also am very fortunate that I work in a very healthy environment, and we are all challenged to not make new meetings.
I'm sorry that I very clearly laughed off topic, like just completely on mute when that question came up. It's not like I was thinking about my past. It's okay. Currently, though, I've made it very clear to a lot of people on my team, like, if you are going to have a meeting with me, you better have a purpose, an agenda, and an outcome. If you cannot fill this out, get it off my calendar. I don't want it. We don't want it. Nobody wants that. If you cannot tell me why I have to be in that meeting, get it off my calendar. In terms of the meetings that I actually hold, there's that PM meeting that I have, and I have that like once every 2 weeks, and I always just check in like about a day or two before to be like, hey, do we still need this meeting? Like, I know we just added some stuff. Let's go and talk about this. If it can be discussed on Slack, it should not be a meeting. That's my general feeling. With the current structure I have, it's like you can usually expect to at least have one kind of like weekly meeting with your design team or something like that. You can just say it like that. I promise you, it's totally fine. They'll be a little shocked, but like you can absolutely just say that. Anyway, I think I've managed to like decrease my meeting time per week to like roughly like on average 15%. So I'm very happy about that. But when it comes time to like do usability tests, that's when my calendar just goes like, okay, I've like everything now is just usability tests. Like they don't like, and those are the ones where it's like usually the worst. That's where it feels like the worst because they're meetings that other people are like, well, I don't have to be here. I'm like, please, I'm giving you a super cool gift card. But they don't have to be there. So there's all that. But in terms of like meetings, it's not too bad. I will usually set up like the more important meetings for me are the ones where I'm setting up to like meet other people on the design team that I don't know or PMs that I don't know super well. I also just set up like because I have 4 to 6 different PMs, I usually have at least a weekly with them to make sure that we're all on the same page. Is everything still like prioritized at the same point? If it's literally just that question though, I'm just like, we probably don't need a meeting. This is my only question. And then if there's enough back and forth where it becomes like, maybe if there's like 10 to 15 back and forths on Slack, I'm like, what if we just got on a huddle on Slack really quick? I think we actually need to discuss it. So that's generally how it goes. But for the most part, people are pretty respectful about meetings. I will say the hardest thing is like getting into meetings that you feel like you need to be in. So that is the thing that's like really, we got to think about that. Because sometimes you don't need to be in certain meetings. Like when do you have to go talk to the developers? When do you actually have to be a part of their stand-ups? you don't always have to be. Like, I'll be in a stand-up if I know that they're going to be talking about a design that I just like included, and they're like, developers have like, they know me to a point where they're just like, hey, can you just hop into our like huddle really quick, or hop into our stand-up? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, I will prioritize that over any other one-on-ones. So
there's a comment that someone wants to be like you when they grow up. I think that's what we all want to be. We all want to be Robbin when we grow up. But another point of view about meetings is, let's say, you do try to set your boundaries, and people are like, no, sorry, we really want you to be there. Then ask them which meetings are okay for you to multitask in, which of them are okay for you to just listen in on. If you are at a smaller company, like I am, like I have no choice but to go to a lot of these meetings, because the game of telephone is a very real thing. And things get misconstrued all the time. So I tend to like to be in meetings to listen, and to make sure that folks aren't setting the wrong expectations, especially when it comes to design. So when it comes to that, I'm the gatekeeper. So those are all different tactics that you can take at small or large companies to kind of set some boundaries for you, so you actually can spend some time designing. Okay, so Robbin talked about developers, which is exactly where we're segueing into, because we love working with them, right, ladies? So two-part question. First is, we're all career transitioners in some capacity, and we probably never worked with developers in our past, but how did you start getting a feel for working with them? And I guess you have any tips or tricks now that probably been conversing with developers over a long time. It's not as messy of a relationship as people think it is.
Yeah.
Like, truly, it's really
I
not.
feel like I don't have a great answer, because it's not as like scary, or like developers are people too. And so it's kind of like what we talk about all the time in crits. It's like showing your work early and often. If you show your work with developers or engineers, and so you'll notice that those terms are used interchangeably at Sprout. They are titled engineers. Some other places as developers. I don't know enough about what the difference means, but they're kind of the same in my mind. But anyway, so if you, keep them in the loop from, relatively early stages, like, you're going to have a great relationship, because then when it comes time and they pull down this ticket to start actually doing the work, they already know everything. There's no surprises. It's easy. Of course, when they start working, they might find new constraints that we didn't know about yet. And then that's fine. And that's when you come back to the table and compromise or try to figure out a new solution. But as long as they understand and are in the loop on what you're designing from the beginning, and they don't need to know every tiny little detail, but they should know like the big things, I feel like you'll have a really great relationship with them. I don't know if I have anything else to say. It's just like any other relationship, I guess. Just don't surprise them.
yeah, don't be a jerk, and you'll probably do fine. Is my feeling on that. Like, it kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning. Like, one of the first things you should do when you join any company, doesn't matter like where you are, and you're like, doesn't matter how senior you are, you should be talking with your developers. You should be figuring out who they are. Like, the big questions that I will ask any developer or PM, etc., person on my team is like, hey, I'm so and so. Question I have for you is, what are some of the goals that you have like this quarter, and how can I help you? How can I help you get there? Every developer is also, I feel like they're going to have their own way of what they want to do. So I'll just be like, if I gave you a handoff, what's going to be the one that's going to give you the least amount of anxiety? Or how can I give you a handoff that makes you feel like, great, this makes sense, I understand what's going on? Because I don't keep my handoffs rigid in any way. I would rather work with the person I'm working with to make sure, like, I can change around. Like, if they're not looking at the names, that's great. I'm still going to name it for myself so I know what's going on, because I still have to share that with another designer at some point. But I need to at least know what a developer needs to see. Do they also want to comment on like 3 different ways? Because I've literally done things where it's like, hey, I have 4 options for this, and I would like to know which one is going to be like the least amount of like heavy lifting, and what's going to be the one that you would like to move forward with in terms of like sustainability, if we would like to go that way. So TLDR, if you're not working on your soft skills, that's probably one of the biggest things you should be working on. Everything that you can learn in like design lab or any kind of UX thing, those are hard skills. You can learn that. Like, it's learnable. It might take some time depending on who you are, but the soft skills, if you do not feel comfortable with your soft skills, you all need to understand, like all y'all need to understand UX design. If you think it's going to be like oh, I'm really introverted and I don't want to talk to people job, UX design is like 90% talking to people. So work on your soft skills, and you can improve your soft skills by like doing things like what is it, like you can like speak about a topic that you like, and you just want to see, did other people understand what that was. Think about things like the STAR method, like situation, task. I keep forgetting what A is and R. Anyways, it's stuff that you want to like work on for like interviews and stuff. Oh yeah, go to group crits if you're in design lab. If you are in my session, you are talking. Nobody's not allowed to not talk in my session. So like, go to group crits, practice with your mentor, ask to do like role playing stuff if you want. I've done that before. I'll be like, I'm going to be your jerk of a PM today, or I'm going to be a really mean developer today, etc., etc. And I want you to actually try to answer it as if that's the case. Like, don't like, yeah, I'm not asking you to like say, well, if I was going to answer this, just answer the question. Just answer the question. So like, try to talk about stuff that you like. Like, if you are not even sure how to talk about stuff that you like already, like talk about a book you like, talk about something that you learned how to do recently, talk about a game or whatever. If you can't explain what you did and why you like that, et cetera, what are the main points of this thing to somebody else who's a stranger, you're going to have a little bit of trouble doing that like in other places. So that's how I would say you should practice soft skills. Don't just practice with people you're comfortable with. Practice with people who will either like improv with you so you can try to do other things, or B, actually speak, like sign up to do like a poetry reading if you want. You don't even have to make the poetry yourself. It's just a matter of like feeling and understanding what that's like. If that sends chills down your spine, just know your job is this literally every day. It might not be speaking with them, but it might be talking with them on Slack. If you feel like, oh, I don't want to bother anyone, like the moment you think, oh, I don't want to bother anyone, is like another like 2 or 3 hours you could have spent like just saved by just asking the question. So yeah.
So going back to, I mean, Robbin and I are probably going to end up doing like a completely different session on soft skills. So don't you guys worry. We came from support. Both of us came from support. Also, fun fact, the companies that we work at now are actually competitors. So not only are we best friends who work at competing companies. So, but another perspective I actually wanted to give really quickly about working with developers is that before UX became a thing, like an industry that people care about, developers were tasked to actually be the UX designers. They were tasked to build the thing. So if you do end up working with a developer who's been at a company for a very long time and you are one of the first designers, don't take it so personally that they are telling you that you're doing something wrong, because they have a lot of pride in what what they've built, right? So it's kind of the same as someone kind of goes and attacks your design and you're kind of like, where is this coming from, right? Like, I've been working on this for so long and whatever. It's that feeling, right? It's someone new coming in, not knowing it. So like, it does take time to build that relationship with developers. And the best thing you can do is to make friends with them, because there can be times where you're going to ask them to build something very difficult. And if you do not have a good working relationship with them, it is very easy for them to just make up all the reasons to not do it. So don't give them that reason. Instead, be curious, ask your whys. Like, if a developer tells you, we can't build this, don't just get upset, ask them why, and have them walk you through the thought process of, when they build this, here's what happens. Here's how these calls are made. So to achieve what you want as a designer, as a product team, here's what the actual outcome would be. So that way, like, you have an understanding of how things are maybe coded or built on the back end, and then you can relate that to your design. So then as you continue to design more features, you can keep all of those pieces of feedback in your head. So when you design a new component, design a new layout, you can remember like, oh, we talked about this last time, and here's the outcome of that conversation. Let's apply that to whatever new we're designing. So there's always a way to make it work with developers. They are certainly not all just like crotchety and upset that designers are coming in to ruin their life. Like, I promise that we're not. It's just a very different way of thinking. My partner is also a developer, and a very different way. We're trying to achieve the same end goal, but the way developers think, it is in a very linear serial process where they're just trying to code from point A to point B. It's like creating like your set of instructions, and that's all they're focused on, versus UX designers come in and say, okay, but what if at this point, if something happens, what happens here? Those are the things that developers sometimes have issues with. So if you've seen a legacy product where you sit there and you're like, why did someone build it this way? Chances are they didn't have a designer to guide them. And developers they build what they're told to build. So it is not at all like they're not trying to make you upset. It's just that they are literally in the mindset of building what they're being told to build. Hopefully that's helpful. And if either of you want to jump in,
not to like go on a completely to talk about just like developers forever, but that's like a really good point. They are not just machines that are going to make your designs real. They are also a really great source of feedback. Like they know design too, some more than others. So if you're like jamming on something new and invite them to a 30-minute meeting where you can like jam together and think about possible solutions. Like they're not just a machine that's going to like zeros and ones, whatever. Like they're really helpful. They know what we can and cannot do. And they also, a lot of them do have a design centered mind. So bring them into your process as well. They're not just like a way to get somewhere. So yeah.
Also, I just want to say, I love that we have to like explain that they're not robots. Like, this is where we are right now, y'all. Like, none of us are robots. Surprising everyone, like, especially developers. So I think we need to take that step back and just be like, why did I think that in the first place?
Okay. All right. So we're hitting into our last 8 minutes of this. So we're gonna dial it back a little bit because I'm sure we could also talk about design developer relationship all day long. But I do want to circle back to the work-life balance thing. Like I've worked at large companies and small companies. The way they handle it across both, very different, but can also be the same. So in your experiences, how's your work-life balance as it stands? Do you wish that there was anything better? Do you wish that in general companies should consider or not consider certain things? What do we think here? So that's a very
for
personal
me,
thing.
like, it's a big reason why, like, I made my switch. Like, product designer, like one thing, product designer, the new thing. Like, I'm starting the new product design system situation in a couple of weeks. And the main reason why I did that was because, working with 4 to 6 PMs and stakeholders at any given time it's kind of a lot. Like, I can manage it well, like I can do it, but it's like, do I want to survive or do I want to thrive? Like, that's really the question, right? So like for me personally, I like the scenario, like I feel like you have a better work-life balance if you have a one-to-one like PM to designer relationship. And the new team that I'm joining has not just one, not two, but 3 designers on the design system team, and 1 PM and 11 developers. I have never had that many resources in my life, like ever. Like the fact that we have this many people makes me feel like I can have a better work-life balance. And I know for a fact, like the company as a whole also values mental health. They value making sure that you take time for yourself, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that they have this many people makes me feel like it's actually okay for me to step away because I'm not the only person that's going to be making these decisions. And so like for me, like that's why I like working in this particular size of company, because I know that I can rely on somebody else. And like that's such a huge thing. Like people will say like, oh yeah, but you have unlimited time off. And I'm like, how many people feel like, well, I'm the only person doing this? I cannot feel like good about leaving any amount of time because I'm the only person that's doing this. So for me, like my work-life balance has improved like vastly. Like I'm about to go and design a crochet dress. That's how much time I have on my hands right now. Okay. Like I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, plus one to that, I guess. Yeah, at a bigger company, there's going to be more teammates who can cover while you're out. So that's always a benefit. Also working on like at a SaaS company and working on the actual product, working on the software, there is rarely a design emergency. Like what emergency would there be like to design something? So I feel like the engineers have maybe slightly more emergencies, systems go down and like that's just going to happen. But I can't think of one design emergency I've ever had since working in SaaS, which is great. So I think if you choose a route that's maybe more like e-commerce or see like you're probably going to have more of those design emergencies, but I do think it's quite rare because going from design to development is not like something that gets turned around usually very quickly. So um, yeah, I think my work-life balance is really great. Again, something ask about in interviews, and like don't ask how is the work-life balance, because you're not going to get the answer that you want. Like think of like other ways you can investigate this while you're interviewing, and or talk to people who have worked at that company and maybe no longer do. And hopefully you get a chance to talk to people outside of like leadership and management during your interview process. If you don't, that might be like kind of concerning. But yeah, I would say honestly my work-life balance is great. Like I leave at the same time every day, and I don't think about it again until the next day. And I think the nice thing that's happening, and especially in the past 2 years, it's like, oh, what a wonderful idea. If your employees are happy and healthy, they're going to want to come and do good work. And I feel like I'm like truly living that. So hopefully you all also find the same.
All right, we're going to end with one last hot topic because Trevor, I see your comment about wanting to address state of the industry. While that's not the purpose of this webinar, that is more a career-focused, career services type thing. I'm going to ask Mary and Robbin to kind of weigh in quickly on how you feel the UX industry is doing and whether or not you personally think it is a saturated market.
I would put it with this, because it's like, if y'all are worried about this, how many doctors are there in the world? How many nurses are there in the world? How many colleges are still being able to do this stuff? I am not terribly worried about it, because it's like, this is an industry, it is continuing to grow. And like, if y'all are worried about this, like I understand, but like it's tech as a whole that you should be looking at. It is your industries that you're interested in that you should be looking at. Like UX design, I think, is not going to be going away anytime soon, because like you can't get a computer to do that. Like, like literally, we're here to be the critical thinking people. So I'm not worried about it. But I will say, take a look at, make sure make sure you're reading the news, make sure you're keeping up to date with like tech stuff and all that other stuff. Like, cause that's going to be the thing that you should be looking at. I mean, like Zoom, for example, big thing in 2020, might continue to be a big thing, but we need to keep an eye on like to see like how did like meetings work later on in the next 5 years or whatever. We don't know that. You have to think about like, if you're joining a very small startup that's really niche, you might want to think a little bit more about that. So, I mean, yeah, AIs can write novels, but it's just a question of like, are you going to want to put the responsibility on the AI? So that's my feeling.
Yeah, I think there's a place for everybody. I don't think that the market's too oversaturated. I strongly believe like UX is not going to go anywhere. What needs to change though is the fact that companies want to hire senior designers because they want to hire somebody that can jump in, start doing the job. And that's why it's going to be that's why the toughest part is getting your first job. But that's also why when you're in these interviews, you need to be talking about these soft skills. Yes, I am a new designer. Yes, I know human-centered design. Yes, I know how to use Figma. Yes, I will need some mentorship with that. But look at all these other wonderful things I do. I came from sales, so I know how to sell ideas. I was an analyst, so I'm a data whiz or whatever. I was a teacher. I've worked under stress and whatever. Like, what else besides design do you come like preloaded with? And that is going to help you. And I do think it is changing. I think more big companies are trying to hire more associate levels, but definitely like be talking about your soft skills a lot in these interviews.
Yeah, I want to plus 1 million that, because I freaking hate the senior thing. Whenever like it's like I need somebody to replace my role, and they're like, oh, we need somebody more senior to do that, like your level of senior. I'm like, what does that mean to you? And they had to pause because they didn't know what they meant by that. So like it is absolutely up to the company to understand what they mean when they're looking for a senior person, because it's like, do you need somebody to do tactical work, or are you actually saying, I need somebody who can talk to the PMs and actually strategize together with them? Because you don't need to have a senior title to do that.
Something that I also want to challenge everyone to think about before we hop off this call is that UX design spans way beyond the screen. And if you want to get an understanding of what I'm saying, I highly recommend watching the Imagineering story on Disney Plus. Disneyland, Disney in general, they're like the OG UXers, truly. And they are not just designing experiences on a screen. They're designing actual experiences that they want people to feel the minute that they walk into the park. Yes, the Imagineering story, it's on Disney Plus. The things that you hear Walt Disney say, the things that you hear the Imagineers say, like, it is just so forward thinking. Nothing is ever done. And that is like the one thing that Walt Disney wanted everyone to take away, was that Disneyland, Disney will continue to grow and keep going as long as there's imagination and that there's engineering. It's the best series. So truly, like, all of these Disney documentaries really show light on UX is truly beyond the screen. It is you walking through a park. It's you walking through the Apple Store, for example. Like, there are experiences that you can design that is just not on a screen. So that is what I would like to challenge everyone to kind of do. When you walk away from this event, think about what experience design means to you. A user is not just someone who uses a phone, a computer. You have the actual like journey of someone who is experiencing a thing that you're designing. So that's it. We love Disney. I love Disney. But anyway, thank you all for being here on a Friday, joining me, Robbin, and Mary for this very lovely conversation. This was quite the opposite of like the last one. So if you were here for both, thank you. And hopefully it kind of gives you a good perspective on like what it's like to work at a small company versus a large company. Next one, I believe it might be more role focused. I'm still deciding, but we will have an episode 3 that's coming up in the future. So cool. Thank you, Mary and Robbin. Really appreciate your time. Folks, thank you again, all 300 and somewhat of you who joined us live today. Really happy that you're here. Everyone have a great weekend. Again, this is recorded. This will be emailed to you. It'll be on YouTube. Share it all with your friends, all that stuff, and then watch the Imagineering story. Cool. All right. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.